AITA for telling my sister to get a babysitter to watch her kids because I can't. I've always had a complicated relationship with my younger sister. She's 26, and I'm 29. Growing up, she was the baby of the family, and I think that's where some of her entitlement stems from. Our parents weren't overly indulgent, but she always seemed to expect things to go her way. Now that we're adults, that expectation has only grown stronger. She often acts like people are obligated to help her just because she's struggling. And if they can't, she labels them selfish or uncaring. I try to be understanding. Life has been really hard for her lately. She's a single mom to 3 kids, a 7-year-old daughter, a 3-year-old son, and a 1-year-old baby boy. The father of her kids is completely out of the picture, and for good reason. He was abusive, both physically and emotionally. After years of enduring that relationship, she finally got out, but not without a lot of scars, both literal and figurative. He's not allowed to be around the kids, which I fully support, but that means she's doing everything on her own. I can't imagine how hard that must be. That said, her situation doesn't mean she gets to dump her problems on everyone else whenever she's in a bind. I have my own life, my own responsibilities, and my own family to think about. And that's where this story begins. A few days ago, my sister called me in a full-blown panic. I could tell as soon as I picked up that she was stressed out. Her job, which has always been a source of frustration for her, had just switched up her schedule. Originally, they told her she'd have Thanksgiving off, but now they were saying she had to work early shifts because they were short-staffed. She was frantic because she didn't have anyone to watch her kids during those hours. I listened patiently as she explained the situation. I could feel her anxiety through the phone, and I truly felt bad for her. But as much as I sympathized, I already knew I wasn't going to be able to help. My husband and I had planned a trip to New York months ago to spend Thanksgiving with his family. We'd already bought plane tickets and made arrangements, and we were leaving the next evening. I couldn't just cancel everything at the last minute. When she finally paused to take a breath, I gently explained the situation. I told her, "I'm really sorry, but I can't help this time. We're leaving for New York tomorrow night to spend Thanksgiving with my husband's family." I expected her to be disappointed, but I didn't expect what happened next. She immediately started crying and getting upset. "I don't know what to do," she said, her voice trembling. "I have no one else to help me. You're my sister, how can you just leave me like this?" I tried to stay calm and sympathetic. I told her again how sorry I was and that I wished I could help, but this trip had been planned for months, and it wasn't something I could back out of. I even tried to suggest alternatives. I suggested she reach out to a friend or even hire a babysitter for the 2 days she needed, but that only made her angrier. "Do you think I have money for a babysitter?" she snapped, her voice rising with each word. "And my friends have their own families. They're not going to drop everything for me like you should. You're my sister." Her tone was sharp, and I could feel the anger behind her words, but underneath that, there was something else: desperation. I knew she was overwhelmed, probably terrified at the thought of not having anyone to help her, but the way she said it felt like a slap in the face. The emphasis on "like you should" hit a nerve. Her words stung deeply, but I forced myself not to react. I knew better than to take it personally, or at least I tried. She was clearly speaking out of frustration, and I reminded myself that her life has been nothing but a series of uphill battles lately. Still, that didn't make it any easier to hear. It felt like an accusation, like she was saying I wasn't doing enough, that I wasn't fulfilling some unspoken obligation to drop everything whenever she needed me. I took a breath, trying to keep my voice steady, and said, "I understand how hard this is for you, and I really am sorry. But I can't change my plans. We've had this trip planned for months. I wish I could help, but this time, I just can't." I thought that might calm her down, or at least help her see my perspective, but instead, it was like throwing gasoline on a fire. "You're prioritizing your husband's family over your own flesh and blood," she shouted, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and hurt. "Why do you think spending time with them is more important than helping me and my kids? You're being selfish." Her words were like daggers, The way she said flesh and blood made it sound like I was betraying her, like I was abandoning her and her kids in their time of need. And calling me selfish, that was a low blow, especially after everything I've done for her in the past. I could feel my chest tighten, my patience starting to wear thin, but I didn't want to escalate things. I knew that if I let my emotions take over, the conversation would spiral even further out of control. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my composure. This isn't about prioritizing anyone, I said as calmly as I could. We've had these plans for months. We spent a lot of money on plane tickets, and our daughter is really looking forward to seeing her grandparents and cousins. I'm sorry this is happening to you, but I can't just cancel everything. She wasn't having it. She kept going on about how no one in the family cared about her or her kids, how everyone was selfish and only thought about themselves. She even said, I hope you never have to deal with what I'm going through, because maybe then you'd understand what it feels like to be abandoned by your own family. That hit me hard. I've tried to be there for her as much as I can over the years. I've babysat her kids when she needed a break. I've helped her financially when she was struggling to make ends meet. I've been her shoulder to cry on during some of the darkest moments of her life. But no matter what I do, it never seems to be enough. She always wants more, and when I can't give it to her, she lashes out. After a while, I couldn't take it anymore. I told her, I'm sorry you feel this way, but I can't keep having this conversation. I've explained my situation, and I've offered you suggestions for other options. I hope you figure something out, but I can't help this time. She hung up on me after that, and we haven't spoken since. Part of me feels guilty, but another part of me feels relieved that the conversation is over. I talked to my husband about it afterward, and he reassured me that I wasn't in the wrong. He reminded me that it's okay to have boundaries and that I shouldn't feel bad for prioritizing my own family and my own plans. I know he's right, but it's still hard. I hate feeling like the bad guy, even when I know I didn't do anything wrong. My sister is in a tough spot, and I do feel for her, but I can't set myself on fire to keep her warm. I have my own family to think about, and I can't drop everything every time she has an emergency. The whole situation has left me feeling drained. I love my sister, but her constant guilt-tripping and sense of entitlement are exhausting. I hope she finds a solution, but I also hope she realizes that the world doesn't revolve around her. People have their own lives, their own responsibilities, and their own challenges. It's not fair for her to expect everyone to put her needs above their own. I want to have a good relationship with her, but I'm not sure how to move forward when she constantly makes me feel like I'm failing her. All I can do is stick to my boundaries and hope she eventually understands that I'm doing the best I can. Update 1. Later that evening, after the exhausting phone call with my sister, I was starting to feel like I could finally unwind. I had vented to my husband about the situation, gotten some reassurance, and was trying to focus on the upcoming trip to New York. It wasn't just about the trip itself, it was about the much-needed break from the daily grind and the opportunity for our daughter to spend time with her grandparents and cousins. I thought the drama with my sister was behind me, at least for now. But, of course, I should have known better. Around 9 p.m., just as I was double-checking our packing list, my phone buzzed. It was my mom. I almost didn't pick up, but I had no excuse not to. I braced myself as I answered, knowing full well this wasn't going to be a casual chat. And I was right. My mom got straight to the point, asking me why I couldn't watch my sister's kids for a couple of days. My stomach sank. Clearly, my sister had already called her, spilling her version of events, which probably painted me as the villain who refused to help in a crisis. I tried to keep my voice calm as I explained the situation, how we had already booked our tickets months ago, how we were leaving the next evening, and how much money we had spent on this trip. I even told her how excited my daughter was to see her grandparents. But my mom didn't seem moved. Instead, she said something that immediately set my teeth on edge. Don't you think it would be wiser to cancel your plans and help your sister? She's in a real bind, and those kids need someone. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Wiser? Was she serious? I told her, firmly but politely, that canceling the trip wouldn't be wise at all. We'd spent a significant amount of money on plane tickets, and this wasn't some spontaneous getaway, it was a planned family visit. I explained that it wasn't just about money either. It was about commitments and priorities, and my husband's family had been looking forward to this visit for a long time. It wasn't something I could just throw away because my sister had an emergency. But my mom wasn't having it. She doubled down, her tone firm and tinged with that familiar hint of disappointment that only moms seem to perfect. She launched into a lecture about family, using phrases I'd heard so many times before. "This is your sister," she said, her voice heavy with meaning, "your flesh and blood. Family always comes first. Don't you think it would be the right thing to do? It's only 2 days. You can reschedule your trip. What's more important than helping your family when they're in need?" Her words hung in the air like an accusation, but I wasn't buying it. My frustration was bubbling under the surface, threatening to boil over. She wasn't listening to me, not really. It didn't matter how much I explained or how reasonable my points were, she had already decided I was in the wrong. In her eyes, my sister's crisis was the only thing that mattered, and everyone else's plans, commitments, or feelings were secondary. It didn't seem to register with her that I had a family of my own to consider, or that my sister's problems weren't my sole responsibility. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady, and asked the question that had been nagging at me since the start of the conversation. If it's so important that someone helps, why can't you watch the kids? There was a pause on the other end of the line, a hesitation that was louder than any words she could have said. When she finally answered, her tone was almost dismissive, as if her reasoning was so obvious it didn't even need explaining. "I'll be busy," she said simply, as though that was the end of the discussion. I couldn't help it, I laughed. It wasn't a kind laugh or a humorous one. It was sharp, bitter, and born out of sheer frustration. The absurdity of the situation hit me all at once. Here was my mom lecturing me about family obligations, about the importance of sacrifice and doing the right thing, and yet she wasn't willing to lift a finger herself. She could call me and guilt-trip me, but when it came to her stepping up, she had a convenient excuse. The laugh didn't sit well with her. I could almost feel her bristling on the other end of the line. "What's so funny?" she asked, her voice sharp and defensive. I didn't answer directly, but the irony was almost too much to bear. How could she sit there and tell me it was my duty, my responsibility, to put my life on hold for my sister, all while refusing to do the same herself? It was the kind of hypocrisy that would have been laughable if it weren't so infuriating. She didn't back down. Instead, she launched right back into her argument, emphasizing once again that this was my sister, my family, and that I had an obligation to help her. "She's struggling," my mom said, her voice heavy with that mix of guilt and authority that she wielded so well. "She's trying to hold it all together, and she's counting on you. You're her sister. You should help." I wasn't letting it go. I wasn't going to sit there and be guilted into dropping everything without saying my piece. "And this is my daughter," I said firmly, my voice unwavering. "It's my duty to make sure she has the experiences we've planned for her, that she gets to spend time with her grandparents and cousins. It's my duty to follow through on commitments we've made to my husband's family. You're asking me to sacrifice something we've spent months planning, something we've spent a lot of money on, all because my sister didn't plan ahead. How is that fair?" The words spilled out, more forceful than I intended, but I meant every one of them. This wasn't about me being unwilling to help, it was about boundaries, about fairness, about the fact that I shouldn't have to set my life on fire every time my sister ran into a problem. And more than that, it was about the blatant double standard. My mom could pressure me, guilt me, and tell me what I should do, but when it came time for her to step up, suddenly, she was busy. We went back and forth like this for a while, with her trying to guilt-trip me and me standing my ground. She brought up how hard things had been for my sister, how much she was struggling as a single mom, and how it was our responsibility to support her. I acknowledged all of that. I told her I understood how hard my sister's situation was, and I felt for her. But that didn't mean I could or should be the one to fix it every time something went wrong. My sister wasn't the only person in the world with responsibilities and struggles. I had my own family to think about, my own plans to honor. By the end of the conversation, it was clear that we weren't going to see eye to eye. My mom was clearly upset with me, but I was beyond caring at that point. I was drained, emotionally and mentally, from having to defend myself over something that should never have been an issue in the first place. I reiterated, one last time, that I couldn't help this time, and that was the end of it. We hung up, and I sat there for a moment, staring at my phone, feeling a mix of frustration, sadness, and exhaustion. It was one of those moments that made me question everything. Why was it so hard for people to respect boundaries? Why was it always me who was expected to drop everything for my sister? And why was my mom so quick to lecture me about family obligations while refusing to step up herself? I know I wasn't in the wrong, but that didn't make it any easier to deal with the fallout. All I could do was remind myself that I'd done what was best for my family, even if it meant disappointing others. Update 2. The next day, I woke up with a pit in my stomach, dreading what would come next. My sister hadn't contacted me again after our tense phone call, and my mom hadn't reached out either. But I knew it wasn't over. This wasn't the kind of situation that would just go away quietly. I tried to shake off the uneasy feeling as I focused on the final preparations for our trip. My husband was busy double-checking the luggage, and our daughter was buzzing with excitement about seeing her cousins. I wanted to focus on the joy of the trip ahead, but the weight of the unresolved drama loomed large in the back of my mind. By midday, the text came in. It was from my sister. I didn't even need to open it to know what it would say. My gut told me everything I needed to know. Still, I braced myself, hoping against hope that maybe she'd cooled down or found another solution. But of course, that wasn't the case. As soon as I read her words, my stomach twisted into knots. It was another guilt-laden message, dripping with disappointment and frustration. She wrote that she hoped I would come to my senses and change my mind before it was too late. She emphasized how much she was counting on me and how she couldn't believe I would choose a trip over helping her and her kids. The word disappointing stood out like a slap in the face, and she didn't hold back in saying that my decision was, in her view, completely selfish. Even though I had been expecting it, bracing for it, even it still stung. There's something about being painted as the villain by someone you've gone out of your way to help time and time again that leaves you questioning yourself, even when you know deep down that you're not in the wrong. I had done everything I could for her in the past, but none of that seemed to matter now. All she could see was this one moment, this one instance where I couldn't come through for her, and suddenly, in her eyes, I was the bad guy. I sat there for a long moment, just staring at the screen. My emotions were a mix of anger, hurt, and sheer exhaustion. Part of me wanted to ignore the message entirely and move on with my day, but another part of me couldn't let it go unanswered. I knew that engaging her would likely reignite the argument, but the frustration bubbling inside me refused to be ignored. So I sent her a brief, measured response. I asked if she had spoken to our mom again about watching the kids. I already suspected what the answer would be, but I needed her to say it outright. Her reply came almost instantly, as if she'd been waiting for my response. Her answer was exactly what I had expected, but it still managed to infuriate me. She said, with an air of finality, that she hadn't asked Mom because Mom's busy. That was it. No further explanation, no acknowledgement of the glaring double standard. Just 2 words, Mom's busy. I felt my blood boil as I reread those words. Busy. Busy with what, exactly? The same mom who had called me the night before, pressuring me to cancel my trip and sacrifice my plans for the sake of family, couldn't even spare the time to help her own daughter in a crisis. It was hypocritical to the point of absurdity. My mom had gone on and on about duty and family obligations, but when it came time for her to step up, she had conveniently removed herself from the equation. And yet, somehow, I was the one being branded as selfish. The realization that my sister wasn't holding our mom to the same standard only added fuel to the fire. She wasn't angry with Mom for refusing to help. She wasn't questioning why Mom's busy schedule was more important than her kids. Instead, all of her resentment and frustration were directed squarely at me, as if I was the only one in the entire family who had any responsibility to her. It was infuriating, and it made the whole situation feel even more unfair. I stared at my phone, the words "Mom's busy" burning in my mind. I wanted to scream at the sheer audacity of it all. My sister had no problem tearing into me, questioning my priorities, and calling me selfish for having a life of my own, but she wouldn't dare confront our mom. It was easier to make me the scapegoat, to pile all of her anger and disappointment onto me because I was the one who had dared to say no. It didn't matter that I had my own family, my own commitments, and my own boundaries. None of that seemed to matter to her in the slightest. Later that day, as we were getting ready to head to the airport, I found out through a family group chat that my sister had finally managed to find someone to help her. One of her friends had agreed to watch the kids for the 2 days she needed. I felt a wave of relief, thinking this might finally put an end to the drama. But, of course, that relief was short-lived. Not long after, I got another text from my sister. This one was even more biting than the last. She told me that her friend had stepped up because she was more sensitive and caring than her own sister. She wrote that it was sad that someone outside the family was more willing to help her than I was. Reading that message, I felt a mix of anger and disbelief. It wasn't just the words themselves, it was the complete lack of gratitude for what I had done for her in the past. I thought about all the times I'd babysat for her at the last minute, all the times I'd given her money to help with bills or groceries, all the emotional support I'd provided during her roughest moments. None of that seemed to matter now. In her eyes, my refusal to drop everything this one time outweighed every other thing I'd ever done for her. I didn't want to respond, but I couldn't help myself. I wrote back, reminding her that it wasn't fair to judge me so harshly for this one instance. I told her that I wasn't selfish, and that it wasn't easy for me to say no, but I had my own family to think about. I also told her that maybe, instead of criticizing me, she could take a moment to appreciate the friend who had helped her. I even pointed out that it wouldn't hurt for her to acknowledge everything I had done for her over the years and to show a little gratitude for the people who cared about her. Her response, silence. She didn't write back, and honestly, I was fine with that. I knew she was upset, but I wasn't going to keep going in circles with her. It was exhausting, and I was done letting her guilt trips dominate my thoughts. I focused on our trip, determined to enjoy the time with my family and not let this drama overshadow what was supposed to be a special occasion. Even so, the whole situation left a bitter taste in my mouth. It wasn't just about this one incident, it was about the pattern. It was about how my sister always seemed to expect everyone to prioritize her needs above their own. It was about how my mom backed her up, pushing that same narrative, but then conveniently avoided stepping up herself. And it was about how, no matter how much I tried to help, it never seemed to be enough. There was always something more she wanted, and if I couldn't deliver, I became the bad guy. I don't know if my sister will ever fully understand my perspective. I don't know if she ever see that setting boundaries doesn't make me selfish, it just makes me human. But for now, I'm choosing to focus on my own family and the things that matter most to me. If that makes me selfish in her eyes, so be it.